and smarter than ever, yet well-being keeps declining.
Now that statement, it sounds like a paradox, doesn't it? But it's not. This isn't some kind of cultural failure, and it's certainly not an individual psychological problem. The fact that we're seeing this trend across so many advanced economies, well, that points to a much deeper cause.
You see, the decline in well-being is actually a predictable output of how our modern economic and decision-making systems are designed. The simple truth is, well-being was never a primary goal of these systems. So, its decline isn't an accident, it's a direct consequence of how they operate.
At the very heart of this problem is a kind of broken promise. It's this deep-seated assumption that progress, in things like productivity and efficiency, should automatically lead to a better human experience.
But that assumption is completely false. And the reason why is actually very simple. Systems do not optimize for outcomes they do not measure. Our modern economic systems just don't measure human well-being in any real operational way.
To really understand why that assumption fails, we have to look at what our systems are actually built to see. Inside these systems, measurement basically defines reality. What gets measured gets managed, and what doesn't get measured, well, for all practical purposes, it's ignored.
Think about what our economic systems prioritize. It's always the stuff that's easy to quantify. Things like output, growth, efficiency, speed, utilization. These are all clear, linear metrics. But well-being? That's slow, it's contextual, it's nonlinear. It just doesn't fit into those neat little boxes, so the system has no way to track it accurately.
And this leads to what you could call a logic of exclusion. Since well-being isn't measured by the system, it gets left out of the system's decision-making. What is excluded from measurement is, by definition, excluded from optimization. It's as simple as that.
Now, this logic of exclusion isn't just an abstract idea. It has real, tangible consequences. Take, for example, the way modern systems are increasingly designed to prioritize speed. They value instant responses and being always on. And while that might improve system performance, it comes with a huge hidden cost for the humans inside that system.
There's a really clear cause and effect chain here. First, the demand for speed squeezes the time we have for recovery. Then, the demand for constant responsiveness completely replaces our ability to reflect. And finally, that relentless drive for optimization gets rid of any slack in the system. The problem is, our well-being absolutely depends on that slack.
Technological progress did an amazing job of reducing our physical labor. But what did it do for our cognitive load? Instead of reducing it, technology actually cranked it way up by increasing the sheer number of decisions we have to make and the amount of information we have to process. The fundamental problem is that our human cognitive capacity just hasn't scaled at the same pace as these new demands.
So when that cognitive demand is constantly higher than our capacity to recover, well-being starts to decline. We often call this burnout and frame it as some kind of personal failure. But it's much more accurate to see it as overload, an expected, predictable output of the system itself.
Overload isn't the only mechanism at work, though. There's another powerful force driving this decline in well-being: the transfer of volatility. Our modern economic systems are built to keep themselves stable, and one of the main ways they do that is by pushing risk away from the core of the system.
And this is a really fundamental shift. We're talking about risk that used to be absorbed and buffered by large institutions, corporations, governments, unions. Now more and more of that risk is being borne directly by the individual.
So, what does this transferred volatility actually look like in our lives? Well, it shows up as things like unstable income, a constant focus on performance-based metrics, a culture of continuous evaluation, and these incredibly short feedback loops. Each one of these things takes uncertainty from the system and transfers it directly onto us.
The trade-off here is direct and, frankly, unforgiving. The system gets more flexible and more stable, but it does so at the direct expense of well-being at the human level. In this exchange, our well-being is essentially sacrificed to keep the system efficient.
Now, you might think that more advanced technology, especially artificial intelligence, could help reverse this trend, but actually, it does the opposite. It accelerates it. You see, smarter tools don't automatically lead to better human outcomes.
At its core, what is artificial intelligence? It's a tool. It's an optimizer, specifically designed to get better at prediction, coordination, and execution, all to achieve a given set of objectives much more efficiently.
And that raises a really critical question. If our tools for optimization are getting exponentially smarter, why aren't the outcomes for our well-being getting any better? The answer is that intelligence doesn't redefine what success looks like. It just speeds up the chase for the objectives that are already there. And since well-being isn't part of the system's objective function, AI just accelerates its erosion. An optimization process that doesn't have human constraints is completely indifferent to human limits.
Okay, so once you understand these mechanisms, the bias in what we measure, the transfer of risk, AI's role as an accelerator, you can start to reframe the entire problem. The decline in well-being is so often presented as some kind of personal failing, and this creates a powerful illusion of individual responsibility.
The common story we're told is that the problem is inside of us. We need to manage our stress better, be more resilient, practice more self-care. But that narrative completely ignores the true systemic causes, that this is a consequence of system design, a deep measurement bias, and a systematic transfer of risk.
These narratives about personal responsibility just misidentify the cause of the problem. They take something that is structural and they make it feel individual. And by putting the site of the failure on the person, they conveniently protect the existing system design from scrutiny.
Recognizing that this is a structural problem leads us to one final, crucial insight. It helps us dismantle this false idea that personal failure is the root cause. Well-being didn't just vanish from the modern world.
The reality is much more direct. It was never designed into the system in the first place. The decline we're observing isn't an anomaly. It is the system functioning precisely as it was designed.
This channel explains money, artificial intelligence, and decision-making as interconnected systems. No hype, no gurus, no personal branding. New videos weekly.